The Invincible Empire had ruled the stars for over 3,000 years. Their fleets were unmatched, their armies unstoppable, their name feared in every corner of the galaxy. Worlds surrendered at the first sight of their banners. Resistance was rare, and when it came, it was crushed quickly and brutally. Admiral Kellis stood on the command deck of the Imperial flagship Dominator, hands clasped behind his back, looking out at the vast emptiness ahead. His fleet over 3,000. Warships moved in perfect formation, stretching across the black void like a wall of steel. It was a display of pure power. They were on their way to Sector 9 Delta, a quiet part of the galaxy far from Imperial borders. Intelligence reports claimed there was a cluster of unclaimed resource-rich systems there. The Empire would take them. It was a routine operation, the kind the Empire had done countless times. Kellis's officers were relaxed, confident. No one expected trouble. Navigation status? Kellis asked calmly. "All ships in formation, Admiral," replied Commander Varin. "We'll reach the sector border in 7 hours." Kellis nodded. "Excellent. Begin pre-invasion drills. I want the fleet ready the moment we arrive." The crew moved with disciplined precision. The Empire was a machine, and Kellis prided himself on keeping his part of it perfect. But then, "Admiral," said the sensor officer, her voice suddenly tight, "I'm picking up something." Kellis turned, defying something. Single contact. Bearing 004 Mark 7, it's stationary. No transponder code. A ripple of curiosity passed through the command crew. A lone ship in this sector. That was unusual. Range? Kellis asked. Approximately 3.6 million kilometers. No response to hails. Commander Varin gave a faint smirk. Probably a drifting cargo ship or pirates. Kellis's gaze hardened. Pirates don't sit still in the dark waiting for an Imperial fleet. Bring it on the main display. The view screen shifted, and there it was, a dark, angular silhouette, floating alone in the endless void. No running lights. No heat signature. Just a shadow. Magnify, Kellis ordered. The image grew sharper, but somehow the ship still seemed wrong. Its surface was jagged in some places, smooth in others, like it had been patched together from battles long past. It gave no sign of life, no signal. "Can we identify the class?" Kellis asked. The sensor officer hesitated. "Negative, Admiral. The hull configuration doesn't match any known Imperial or alien ship on record." Varin snorted. "Then it's probably junk. Shall I dispatch a corvette to investigate?" Kellis considered, then nodded. "Send Corvette Alpha 1. If it's hostile, destroy it." Minutes later, the corvette moved ahead of the fleet. A sleek Imperial craft armed with enough firepower to vaporize most pirate ships. "Corvette Alpha 1 to Fleet Command," came the pilot's voice over comms. "We are approaching the unidentified vessel now. No activity detected. Scanners are..." "Wait." Static hissed. "Alpha 1, repeat," Kellis said sharply. The voice returned, but it was distorted. "Our targeting systems just went offline." A sharp burst of noise, then silence. "Alpha 1, respond." Nothing. The sensor officer's face went pale. "Admiral, Alpha 1 just vanished from sensors." Kellis's eyes narrowed. "Vanished? You mean destroyed?" "No, sir. No explosion, no debris. It's as if it was never there." A cold weight settled in the Admiral's chest. He didn't show it. "All ships, stand by for combat. I want weapons hot." 5 minutes. Later, another officer spoke, voice unsteady. "Sir, long-range comms are down." Kellis's head snapped toward him. "Explain." "No signal in or out of the fleet. Local comms are stable, but anything beyond a few hundred kilometers, nothing." Kellis looked at the black silhouette on the screen. It was still there, unmoving. But now it felt like it was watching them. Could it be jamming us? Vareen asked. Possibly, Callus said slowly. Or something worse. The tension on the bridge was thick now, without warning. The shadow began to move. Contact is accelerating toward us, the sensor officer said, voice trembling. Speed. Unknown. It's not matching any propulsion signature we know. On the view screen, the dark ship seemed to glide rather than fly. No visible thrusters, no energy flares, just silent motion. Range, Callus asked. 3 million kilometers? 2.5, 2. Target it, Callus ordered. Fire a warning shot. A barrage of plasma bolts streaked out. From the fleet's forward ships, blazing through the void toward the shadow. But just before impact, the bolts vanished. They didn't explode. They didn't even flare. They simply blinked out of existence. Gasps filled the bridge. What just happened? Vareen STAMMERED. The sensor officer shook her head. The energy readings, they're gone. Like the shots were erased. Callus's voice was ice. All ships full firepower, now. The void lit up as hundreds of missiles and energy beams converged on the lone ship. It should have been obliterated dot instead. The space around the shadow seemed to shimmer, and every projectile disappeared. Again, not destroyed. Not deflected. Gone. Admiral, the comms officer whispered. We've got an incoming transmission. From whom? The shadow ship. Callus exchanged a look with Vareen, then said, put it through. The screen went black for a moment. Then white letters appeared, simple and cold. Turn back now. A heavy silence fell. Vareen forced a laugh. It's trying to scare us, pathetic. But no one else laughed. Callus studied the words, his mind turning. He had heard stories, old tales told by fringe worlds of ships like this. Ships that appeared without warning, destroyed fleets, then vanished. Most dismissed them as myths. But Callus had read the classified reports. He turned to his crew. Bring us closer. I want to see what we're dealing with. The fleet advanced. The shadow ship did not move to flee. It simply waited. As they drew nearer, details became clearer. The hull was blackened and scarred, but not from recent battle. These scars were ancient. Some sections looked like they had been melted and reformed. Strange markings ran along its sides, symbols no imperial historian could place. And then, just for a moment, the ship's name flickered into view, painted in faded white across the prow. HSS Revenant. Callus froze. He knew that name. Everyone in the high ranks did. The Revenant had been the pride of the old human navy. Over 2 centuries ago, during the war between the Empire and humanity. The humans had been fierce, stubborn, and dangerously intelligent. They had fought the Empire to a standstill longer than any other race. And then, they had vanished. Their worlds burned, their fleets gone. The Revenant was believed destroyed in the final battle. But here it was. Admiral. The sensor officer's voice shook. The ship is locking onto our lead destroyer. Shields up. Callus barked. Before the order could even be completed, the Revenant vanished from the screen. Not cloaked, gone. Sensors screamed with alarms. Incoming point-blank range. The shadow reappeared right beside the Imperial destroyer. In an instant, a massive metallic spear shot from its side, impaling the destroyer through its core. Energy flared, and the destroyer split in half. The Revenant vanished again before the wreckage had even finished. Breaking apart. The bridge was chaos now. Callus raised his voice over the noise. All ships combat spread. Do not let it get close. Vareen's face was pale. Admiral, this is madness. That ship I know what it just did, Commander. Callus said coldly. In the silence that followed, Callus thought he heard something faint, deep in the comms feed. A human voice, speaking quietly. You came to our space. You won't leave. The transmission cut. The shadow was gone again. But every officer knew it was still out there. And Callus understood, with grim certainty. The Invincible Empire had just met something it had not seen in over 2 centuries, something that could fight back, something human. The fleet was no longer the proud wall of steel it had been hours ago. Every officer aboard the Imperial flagship Dominator now felt the weight of fear pressing down on them. 1 destroyer gone in seconds. 1 corvette erased without a trace. And somewhere in the endless black, the human warship HSS Revenant was still watching. Admiral Keeley stood silently at the front of the bridge, staring into the void. Around him, officers whispered in low voices, trying not to let the tension crack their discipline. Commander Vareen broke the silence first. "Admiral, what exactly are we dealing with?" Callus didn't answer at once. Instead, he turned to the comms officer. "Has Central Command responded?" The officer shook his head. "Long-range comms are still down. I've tried encrypted. Bursts, frequency sweeps, even emergency channels. Nothing." Vareen frowned. "So we're cut off. That ship wants us blind and deaf." Callus finally spoke, his voice low. "This is no ordinary ship. I know its name. And I know the war it came from." The crew exchanged uneasy looks. Most of them had only heard vague stories about humanity, if they'd heard anything at all. The Empire had erased the history of that war from public records. 2 centuries ago. Callus began speaking, his eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. "Over 200 years ago, the Empire expanded into the Orion Arm. We found a young, defiant species, humans. They had no great empire, only a handful of colonies, but they were different." "Different?" Vareen asked. Callus nodded slowly. "They fought like no other race we had encountered. Most species surrender when facing overwhelming power, not humans. They refused. Every battle they adapted. Every loss they learned. We destroyed fleets, and they built stronger ones. We burned worlds, and they fought harder." The censor officer listened quietly, her fingers frozen over her console. Callus continued. "The war lasted far longer than the High Council ever predicted. At one point, the humans even managed to strike deep into Imperial territory. It was embarrassing. For the first and only time, the Empire feared defeat." Vareen scoffed. "And yet, here we stand. Humanity is gone." Callus's eyes narrowed. "Yes, eventually, we crushed their homeworlds. Their fleets were scattered, but even in defeat, they were dangerous. There were rumors of a final human weapon, something that could destroy entire fleets without conventional firepower. Officially, it never existed. Unofficially." He gestured toward the shadow that was now just a faint mark on the edge of the sensors. "You're looking at it." The bridge fell silent. The Revenant was no ghost ship. It was a survivor. Vareen broke the quiet. "You're telling me that thing has been hiding for 2 centuries?" "Not hiding," Callus corrected. "Waiting, watching." The comms officer hesitated before speaking. "Admiral, if that's true, then why reveal itself now?" Callus didn't answer immediately. He thought back to those old classified reports accounts from Imperial captains who had fought the humans. They spoke of an unspoken law. Humans never struck first without a reason. Because, Callus said at last, we entered their space. Elsewhere in the fleet aboard the Imperial frigate Resolute, Lieutenant Daros was on edge. He'd fought pirates, rebels, and even the strange insectoid swarms from the Outer Rim, but he had never seen a ship erase weapons fire like the Revenant had. "Feels like magic," muttered one of the gunners beside him. Daros shook his head. "It's not magic, it's tech. Old, maybe, but better than ours." The gunner laughed nervously. "Better than the Empire? Nothing's better than the Empire." Daros didn't answer. Deep down, he wasn't sure anymore. "Back on the Dominator, Admiral," the censor officer reported. "The contact is gone again. No trace." Callus frowned. "It's still here. It's just choosing not to be seen." Varine stepped closer to him. Sir, with all respect, we should withdraw. Without long-range comes, without knowing what that ship is capable of, we're vulnerable. Callus turned sharply. Withdraw? And let the entire sector think the Invincible Empire fled from a single vessel? No, Commander. If we retreat now, we'll be hunted forever. Varine's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The files Callus moved to his private terminal and access to secure archive one few in the fleet even knew existed. Holoscreens flickered to life, showing grainy images of human warships, battles fought in deep space, and wreckage drifting in cold silence. There it was, the HSS Revenant, in its prime. Sleek, deadly, with a reputation as the most feared ship in the human navy. The reports spoke of impossible maneuvers, weapons that bent the laws of physics, and armor that could shrug off sustained bombardment. One report stood out. Engaged Revenant at close range. Enemy vessel disabled 2 cruisers in under 40 seconds. Standard tactics ineffective. Ship employed unknown gravitational weapon suspect mass alteration field. Recommend complete avoidance. Callus read those words slowly, feeling the truth settle over him. The Revenant hadn't just survived 2 centuries. It had been waiting for a reason to return. Hours past the fleet held position, scanning every corner of the void. Nothing. No sign of the Revenant. Some officers began to hope it had left. Others suspected it was only playing with them. Then, Admiral. The sensor officer shouted. Multiple energy spikes across the fleet. Source? Callus demanded. Her voice shook. It's from inside our ships. Systems are shutting down navigation, weapons, shields one by one. On the view screen, a destroyer in the second line flickered with emergency lights, then drifted powerless. Another followed. Callus clenched his fists. It's disabling us without even firing. Varine's voice was tight with fear. This isn't a battle. It's a message. The message. The comms officer turned pale. Sir, incoming transmission. Audio only. Put it through, Callus ordered. A voice filled the bridge, deep, human, and calm. You have crossed into human territory. You have attacked without provocation. Leave now, or be destroyed. The voice carried no anger, no shouting, only certainty. Varine spat. How dare they? But Callus held up a hand. Identify yourself, he said into the comm. The voice replied, still calm. Captain Elias Ward, commanding officer of the HSS Revenant. Callus's eyes narrowed. The name was in the old war records, a decorated human captain. Reported killed in action 2 centuries ago. That's impossible, Varine whispered. Callus straightened. Captain Ward, the war is over. Humanity is no more. A pause. Then, if that were true, Admiral, I wouldn't be here. The transmission cut. Tension breaks. The bridge was silent again. Everyone felt it. The shift in the air. This was no accident, no ghost story. This was real. Callus turned to his crew. Prepare for engagement. If the Revenant wants to fight, we'll give it one. But even as he said it, part of him knew this wasn't going to be like any battle the Empire had fought before. Somewhere, deep in the black, a lone human warship was waiting. And it had every advantage. The fleet of the Invincible Empire was ready. Rows of destroyers, cruisers, and battleships stood in perfect formation. Weapons charged, shields glowing faintly in the darkness. On the Imperial flagship Dominator, Admiral Callus stared into the void, waiting for the Revenant to make its move. Every officer felt the tension. It was the kind of silence that made the skin crawl, the calm before a storm that no one wanted to face. The human ship had spoken. It had warned them. And now everyone knew it would strike. Admiral, the sensor officer said suddenly, I've got something faint gravimetric distortion, bearing 270 Mark 6. Callus didn't hesitate. Turn all forward batteries to that vector. Lock and fire the moment you have a target. The gunners were quick. Dozens of ships turned, weapons aligning. Energy beams, plasma cannons, and missile salvos were primed. Contact at 1.5 million kilometers, the officer called out. Closing. Fast. Callus gave the order. All ships fire. Space lit up with Imperial firepower. Plasma bolts streaked forward. Beams cut across the darkness. Missiles roared silently toward the target. The amount of fire unleashed in that single volley could have destroyed an entire planetary defense fleet. The Revenant didn't dodge. It didn't even slow down. Instead, the space around it shimmered like light bending through water, and every single shot vanished, not deflected, not absorbed, simply gone. On the Dominator's bridge, a wave of disbelief swept through the crew. Direct hits across the board, Admiral, the weapons officer reported. But no damage. Readings show nothing. It's as if our shots were never fired. Callus's expression didn't change. Keep firing. They fired again. And again. The results were the same. The Revenant came closer. At 500,000 kilometers, it vanished from sensors entirely. Where is it? Vareen demanded. The answer came a heartbeat later. Incoming point-blank range. The sensor officer shouted. The human warship reappeared right beside an Imperial cruiser. Before the cruiser could react, a massive kinetic slug tore through its hull like paper. The impact was silent in the void, but the result was devastating. Half the ship broke away in molten fragments, venting crew and atmosphere into space. The Revenant was gone again before the wreckage had even cooled. All ships, combat spread. Callus ordered. Do not cluster together, make it work to reach you. The Imperial fleet spread out, trying to form a web of overlapping fire, but the Revenant didn't attack in straight lines. It appeared and disappeared at will, striking from impossible angles. A destroyer exploded in a ball of fire as its reactor went critical. A battleship's main gun was sheared clean off. A carrier lost all power and began to drift, helpless. Inside the Revenant, Captain Elias Ward stood on the bridge, calm but focused. His crew, barely 24 men and women, worked with silent precision. Target the command ships, Ward ordered. Cut the head off the snake. Yes, Captain, replied Lieutenant Mara, the tactical officer. Next target, Imperial battleship Iron Vow. The Revenant dropped back into real space, less than 2 kilometers from the Iron Vow's hull. At that range, the human ship's weapons hit with terrifying speed coils of hyper-accelerated slugs, punched straight through the battleship's armor. Before the Iron Vow could return fire, the Revenant was gone again. On the Dominator, the reality of the battle was sinking in. Admiral, Vareen said urgently, we can't keep this up. Every time it appears, we lose another ship. We can't even hit it. Callus's jaw was tight. Then we adapt. Prepare net intercept pattern. The order went out, and the fleet began deploying mines, small, autonomous drones that created overlapping webs of explosive coverage. In theory, this would make it harder for the Revenant to move unseen. The plan worked briefly. When the Revenant reappeared near a destroyer, 2 mines detonated, sending shockwaves through its shields. But instead of retreating, the human ship simply turned toward the nearest minefield and slid through it. Mines vanished before they could explode, erased from existence like the Imperial weapons earlier. On the Dominator's bridge, Callus realized the awful truth. The minefields were useless. Minutes passed. The Imperial fleet's numbers dwindled. In the chaos, the crew began to notice a pattern. The Revenant wasn't destroying every ship it could. Instead, it was picking targets carefully. Command ships, heavy weapons platforms, carriers. It was dismantling the fleet's ability to fight, piece by piece. Inside the Revenant, Ward watched the tactical display. Imperial formation collapsing. Mara reported. They're trying to retreat toward the Dominator, Ward nodded. Let them. We want the Admiral to watch. The human ship appeared just 10 kilometers off the Dominator's port bow. On the bridge, Callus finally saw it with his own eyes, not on a screen, but through the forward viewport. The Revenant was smaller than most Imperial battleships, but it radiated an aura of pure menace. Its blackened hull bore scars from ancient battles. Along its sides, faint blue lines pulsed with energy. For a moment, the two flagships stared at each other across the void. Then Ward's voice came over open comms. "Admiral Callus, you've tested our patience. Leave now, and some of your ships may survive." Callus didn't reply. Instead, he raised his hand. "All forward guns fire." The Dominator's main cannons unleashed a concentrated barrage at point-blank range. The firepower was enough to crack a moon in half, and still the Revenant shimmered, and the shots disappeared. Callus's hands tightened into fists. Impossible. The human ship's response was swift. A single pulse of energy shot from its prow, striking the Dominator's shields. They collapsed instantly. A second pulse ripped through the forward weapons array, silencing half the ship's guns. Before Callus could react, the Revenant was gone again, only to reappear near another battleship, tearing it apart. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The once proud Imperial fleet was now a scattered wreck of drifting hulks, burning ships, and desperate survivors. Finally, the Revenant sent one last message. This was mercy. Do not return. And then it was gone. No one saw it leave. Number. Engine trails, no hyperspace jump signature. One moment it was there, the next, only empty space remained. Callus stood on his damaged bridge, staring into the void. The Invincible Empire had just fought a single human warship, and they had lost. The silence after the battle was worse than the noise during it. The Imperial fleet was broken. Half its ships were gone. The rest drifted in fractured formation, their engines burning weakly, their crews exhausted and afraid. On the Imperial flagship Dominator, Admiral Kelly stood at the shattered viewport. The stars outside seemed colder than ever. His hands were clasped behind his back, but inside, his mind raced. The human warship, the HSS Revenant, had vanished. No trace on sensors. No energy readings, but Callus knew it wasn't gone. It was still here, watching. Commander Varine approached, his voice low. "Admiral, we must retreat to the nearest safe sector. The fleet is in no condition to continue fighting." Callus didn't turn. "If we run, Commander, it will hunt us." Varine frowned. "You think it's following us?" Callus's eyes stayed on the darkness outside. "I don't think." "I know. The Watcher in the dark aboard the Revenant, Captain." Elias Ward sat in the command chair, eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Imperial ships were scattering, some limping toward hyperspace lanes, others grouping for mutual defense. "Target priority?" asked Lieutenant Mara. Ward's voice was calm, almost cold. "Command ships first, then carriers. Keep the rest alive long enough to spread fear." The human crew moved with quiet precision. They had trained for this for decades, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the Empire to stumble into their territory. Today was not about destroying every ship. Today was about sending a message that would echo across the galaxy. The first kill of the hunt, the Revenant reappeared without warning beside an Imperial command cruiser. Before the cruiser's crew could react, a lance of pure kinetic energy ripped through its midsection. The ship split apart in total silence, its reactor spilling molten fire into the void. On the Dominator's bridge, an officer cried out, "Admiral! The Nighthammer is gone. No distress call, no survivors." Varine slammed a fist against the console. "It's picking us off one by one." Running the Gontal Kalis made a quick decision. "All ships, regroup on my signal. We form a shield wall around the Dominator and head for the hyperlane to Sector 8 Beta. We keep firing in all directions." The order went out, and the fleet began to move. But the Revenant was faster. It darted in and out of sensor range, striking from impossible angles. One moment it would appear on the port side of the destroyer, slicing through its engines. The next it would materialize above a carrier, tearing open its hangar bay before vanishing again. The Imperial formation struggled to hold. Every ship destroyed. Left a hole the Revenant could exploit. Inside the Revenant, Lieutenant Mara's hands danced over her controls. We've crippled their long-range cum ships. The rest are falling back in tight formation. Ward studied the screen. They're scared. Scared fleets make mistakes. The tactical display showed the Imperial ships clustering around the Dominator, like prey trying to shield itself from a predator. Ward smiled faintly. Time to break them apart. The trap as the Imperial fleet advanced toward the hyperlane. They were forced to pass through a narrow asteroid field, a natural choke point. Callus saw the danger instantly. All ships, maximum shields, watch for ambush. But the Revenant didn't attack from outside the field. It appeared inside it. From the heart of the asteroid belt. The human ship opened fire with surgical precision, using the rocks as cover. Imperial ships tried to return fire, but their shots either hit the asteroids or were erased before reaching their target. A heavy cruiser collided with a drifting rock after losing engine power. Another ship's shields collapsed under concentrated fire, leaving it helpless to the Revenant's next strike. Fear spreads on the bridge of the Imperial frigate Resolute. Lieutenant Darrows could feel the panic creeping in. Every time the Revenant appeared, another ship died. The crew barely had time to react before it was gone again. "This isn't a battle," muttered one of the gunners. "It's slaughter." Darrows clenched his jaw. "It's worse. It's hunting us." The pursuit the asteroid field ended, but the danger didn't. The Revenant followed, appearing at random intervals to cripple another ship. Each attack was swift, precise, and brutal. Callus began to realize something unsettling. The human ship could have destroyed them all already. It was choosing not to. That meant one thing: this was psychological warfare. The Revenant wanted the survivors to tell the story. The Admiral's plan. Callus made a risky decision. He activated a secure channel to the fleet. "All ships, break formation on my mark. Scatter in all directions." "It will be forced to pick a single target." Varine stared at him. "You're splitting the fleet? That's suicide." Callus shook his head. "No, it's bait. It will come for me." The Revenant bites, the fleet scattered, engines flaring as ships broke away from the Dominator. The Revenant hesitated only for a moment, then appeared directly ahead of the flagship. Ward's voice came over the comms again, calm as ever. "You should have listened to my warning, Admiral." Callus didn't reply. Instead, he triggered the Dominator's last surprise, a network of high-energy pulse emitters hidden along the hull. When the Revenant closed in, the Dominator unleashed a blinding sphere of electromagnetic energy. For the first time in the battle, the human ship staggered. The counterattack. "Now all guns fire." Callus roared. Every weapon on the Dominator opened fire at once. Plasma bolts slammed into the Revenant's shields. Beams cut across its hull. The black ship shimmered, its erasure field straining under the assault. For a few heartbeats, it seemed like the Empire might actually land a killing blow. But then the shimmer flared bright, and the Revenant vanished again. The last sight it reappeared seconds later, far from the Dominator. Callus saw it turn away, engines glowing faintly. The comms crackled one final time. "You fought well, Admiral. But remember this next time. There will be no mercy." And then it was gone. No jump signature, no trace. Only silence. Callus stood at the shattered viewport, breathing heavily. The Revenant hadn't destroyed them all. It hadn't needed to. The message was clear. The Empire could be hunted. And now the galaxy would know. The Invincible Empire had faced countless foes. Entire star systems had bent to its will. But now, standing on the bridge of the Dominator, Admiral Khalees understood a truth that shook him to the core. The Empire was not invincible. 2/3 of his fleet had been destroyed in the relentless hunt by the human warship, HSS Revenant. The ships that remained were battered, limping through the void, and morale had plummeted to its lowest point. Khalees could feel it, the fear, the doubt, the knowledge that one wrong move could mean annihilation. "Admiral," Commander Vareen sighed, voice tight, "we've lost too many ships. If we continue on this path, there will be nothing left of us. We have to retreat." Khalees didn't answer immediately. He studied the void outside, the blackness where the Revenant could be. Anywhere, waiting for the perfect strike. He felt the weight of centuries of imperial pride pressing down on him. The decision he was about to make would define not just his command, but the reputation of the entire empire. "No," he said finally, his voice calm but iron-hard. "We will not run. If the Revenant wants a fleet, I will give it one. But it will have to come for me directly." Vareen's eyes widened. "You can't, Admiral. We are already at half strength." Khalees turned, his gaze unwavering. "Then we will do what we must. Prepare the Hyperion Dreadnought. Bring it out." The Hyperion Dreadnought was a nightmare weapon, the pinnacle of Imperial engineering. It was more than a ship. It was a mobile fortress. Hundreds of meters long, bristling with the most advanced weaponry the Empire possessed. It had been capable of planetary bombardment and annihilation of entire fleets. Few had ever seen it fully deployed, and even fewer had survived its firepower. Dreadnought had been stationed in a secure sector for emergencies, a last resort. And now it was being called upon to face a single human warship. "All hands prepare for combat," Khalees ordered. "The Hyperion Dreadnought is now under my command. If this ship is truly the Revenant, we will face it together, and we will end this threat once and for all." The activation the Dreadnought stirred to life. Its engines flared, sending shockwaves through the nearby space debris. Weapon ports opened, revealing rows of colossal plasma cannons, railguns, and missile batteries. Energy fields shimmered around. Its hull, thick shields capable of absorbing most attacks. Khalees moved to the forward viewport, watching as the remaining fleet rallied around the massive ship. There were perhaps a dozen vessels left, the Dominator, 2 cruisers, and a handful of destroyers. Their combined firepower was dwarfed by the Dreadnought, but it was all the Empire had. "Targeting systems online," reported the Dreadnoughts. "Weapons officer. All energy weapons calibrated. Missiles ready. Shields at maximum capacity." Khalees nodded. "Good. Bring us into range of the Revenant. Let it come to us. Do not engage until I give the order." The calm before the storm. For hours, the fleet drifted, scanning the void for any sign of the Revenant. Sensors probed the darkness, but the human ship remained elusive. Every time a contact was detected, it vanished before weapons could lock. On the bridge, the crew whispered about the impossible power of the Revenant. Some began to doubt that they could win, even with the Dreadnought. Khalees ignored the murmurs. His mind was focused entirely on strategy. "We know its patterns," he said quietly to Vareen. "It strikes like a predator. It waits for fear to take hold, then attacks where we are weakest. We must be ready for anything." Vareen nodded slowly. "And if it targets the Dreadnought first?" Khalees's eyes were steely. "Then it will learn the true cost of underestimating." Humans. The first contact finally, at the edge of the hyperlane. Sensors flared. A faint energy signature appeared. "There," the sensor officer whispered. "It's coming. Bearing 090 Mark IV. Distance, 3 million kilometers." The Revenant was back. The human ship had returned to claim its prey. Khalees's heart raced, but his face remained calm. "All weapons, stand by. Hold fire until I give the order." The Revenant glided forward with terrifying precision. Its hull bore the scars of centuries, but it moved as if untouched. On its bridge, Captain Elias Ward studied the Imperial fleet. With the same calm calculation he had shown for decades, "Targets are ready," Mara said quietly. Ward's lips curled into a small smile. "Let them come. Let them feel the fear of humans who survived centuries." The dreadnought strikes as the Revenant approached. Callus gave the order. "Open fire." The Hyperion dreadnought unleashed everything. Hundreds of energy beams lanced through space. Plasma bolts streaked toward the Revenant at impossible speeds. Missile salvos detonated in perfect synchronization. The void lit up with a blinding display of firepower. For a moment, it seemed the human ship might be hit. Sensors picked up energy dispersions across the hull. Crew members held their breath, and then the ship vanished. The Hyperion's weapons fired at empty space. Striking nothing, missiles detonated harmlessly. Energy beams fizzled out against the shimmer of the Revenant's erasure field. The crew gasped. Even Callus felt a flicker of unease. Counterattack the Revenant did not hesitate. It reappeared directly in the path of the dreadnought, its kinetic weapon discharging a massive pulse. The pulse tore through the dreadnought's shields, creating a breach in the forward hull. Crew stations exploded in sparks and fire. Emergency alarms screamed across the bridge. "Damage report." Callus barked. "Forward weapons array destroyed." The officer shouted. "Shields compromised by 50%. Hull integrity at 72. Vareen gritted his teeth. "It's too fast. Too precise." Callus's jaw tightened. "Then we adjust. Targeting the propulsion system, focus all firepower there." The fleet fired again, and for the first time, the Revenant's shields flickered. The human ship staggered in its course, though only slightly. Callus felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this time they could land a serious blow. The gravitation lance inside the Dominator. Callus accessed another secret. The gravity lance. It was humanity's ultimate weapon, developed centuries ago and banned for its destructive potential. It could manipulate gravitational fields to crush ships, collapse them into singularities, or tear them apart with forces no shield could resist. Callus studied the schematics quickly. The dreadnought's power core could channel the lance, but the timing had to be perfect. "We can't fire too early," Callus said. "The Revenant's erasure field will absorb it. We wait until it commits." Vareen nodded. "Do we even know it can be used in combat this way?" Callus's eyes were cold. "We have no choice. It's our last weapon. Either we end it, or the Empire dies here." The trap is set. The fleet feigned retreat, luring the Revenant closer. The human ship took the bait, accelerating toward the dreadnought with calculated precision. "Now," Callus whispered. The dreadnought's gravity field pulsed. Energy surged through the ship, focused into the gravity lance. The crew held their breath as the weapon charged, ready to unleash a force that could obliterate the human warship in seconds. On the Revenant, Ward sensed the shift. The human ship's sensors picked up the field, an unnatural, overwhelming force radiating from the dreadnought. "This is bigger than before," Mara said, voice tense. Ward's eyes narrowed. "Hold formation. Wait for the moment. It will strike hard, but we survive harder." The clash the gravity lance fired. A stream of compressed gravitational energy shot toward the Revenant, warping space itself. Stars seemed to twist and bend around the beam. The human ship tried to maneuver, but the field was immense, pulling at every ton of its mass. The shield strained. The hull groaned. For the first time in centuries, the Revenant was in real danger. On the Dominator's bridge, Callus felt a surge of triumph. "Focus fire, keep it in the field." The human ship rocked violently. Energy shields flared and sizzled. Systems overloaded. The human response, but Captain Ward was relentless. "Divert power to localize shields. Reinforce structural matrix. We will not fall here." The Revenant twisted through the gravitational field with impossible precision, using its momentum and tiny bursts from auxiliary engines to partially counteract the lance. The dreadnought shook as the human ship almost escaped the deadly pull. Kellis realized the truth. This would not be a simple victory. The Revenant was stronger than any record had ever indicated, but he refused to give up. He would not let the Invincible Empire fall. The final stand of Part 5, the battle raged on. The dreadnought's gravity lance continued to push the Revenant, but the human ship maneuvered with cunning and skill that no Imperial officer had ever seen. The fleet around them, battered and exhausted, fired at every possible angle to help channel the lance's energy dot, and through it all, Kellis knew this was a fight to the very limits of human and Imperial engineering. A battle that would decide not just the fate of a fleet, but the reputation of the Invincible Empire itself. The Revenant was strong, but the dreadnought had power the Empire had never unleashed before. The stage was set for the ultimate confrontation, and the galaxy watched, even if only in whispers of rumor and fear. The void outside the Dominator was a field of dying stars, smoke trails, and shattered hulls. The remains of the Imperial fleet drifted in the aftermath of the Revenant's relentless hunt. Ships that had survived the earlier engagements were battered and trembling, their crews exhausted and fearful. Admiral Kellis stood at the forward viewport, his hands gripping the console, eyes fixed on the darkness. Somewhere out there, the human warship lingered. It had been patient, methodical, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This is it, Kellis muttered to himself, the moment of truth. Commander Vareen came up beside him, his face pale. Admiral, we are barely functional. Even the dreadnought is damaged from the last engagement. Can we really do this? Kellis didn't turn. His mind was focused on one thing: victory, or the survival of what remained of the Empire. We can, and we will. If the Revenant thinks it can destroy us completely, it is wrong. We fight not just for survival, but for the Empire itself. The gravity lance charges the Hyperion dreadnought hummed with raw power. Its engines flared, shields rippling, and weapon ports opened to unleash their fury. At the heart of the ship, the gravity lance pulsed, building a massive gravitational field strong enough to crush even the most resilient starship. The crew worked in silence, every movement precise. Hundreds of energy relays focused on the lance's core. Any mistake, and the weapon could destroy not just the Revenant, but the dreadnought itself. Kellis's voice broke the quiet. Steady, wait until it enters the field fully. Do not fire prematurely. Timing is everything. Vareen nodded, though the tension in his shoulders betrayed his fear. We've never done this before. It's untested in battle. Kellis's eyes hardened. Then we test it now, or we die trying. The Revenant approaches sensors flared. The Revenant had appeared again, silent, deadly, gliding through space with a precision no Imperial vessel could match. Its black hull shimmered, faintly erasure fields distorting space around it. Distance, 2 million kilometers, the sensor officer called. Closing rapidly, Kellis watched, noting the ship's movements. It knows we are ready. That only makes this fight more dangerous. Ward's voice came over the open comms, calm and deliberate. Admiral Kellis, you have one chance. Stand down, and some of your fleet may survive. Resist and witness the Empire's first defeat. Kellis's response was a firm glare, his fingers tightening on the console. We do not surrender. The Revenant's energy signature pulsed, a warning and a challenge in one. The engagement begins as the Revenant entered the range of the gravity lance. The dreadnought activated the weapon fully. Space itself seemed to twist and bend. Stars elongated, and nearby debris spun in impossible arcs. The gravitational pull increased, tugging at every Imperial ship in the formation. The Revenant responded instantly. Small auxiliary engines flared, maneuvering the ship in sharp bursts to counteract the field. Shields flared to maximum, resisting the pressure. For a few heartbeats, it looked like the human ship might survive, but Callus knew patience was key. Hold it. Keep it inside the field. Do not release until I give the order. The Imperial fleet fired in support, beams and plasma lancing toward the Revenant, further constraining its movements. The first strike, now. Callus shouted. The dreadnought unleashed the gravity lance's full potential. Space around the Revenant contracted violently. The human ship shuddered under the force, its hull groaning as energy shields strained. On every screen in the dreadnought, displays showed spikes in gravitational pressure reaching their peak. Hull integrity dropping, a weapons officer shouted. Shields failing. For the first time in centuries, the Revenant faltered. It twisted, energy flaring from damaged systems. Callus allowed himself a brief smile. Perhaps finally, the Empire's nemesis would fall. The countermove, but Captain Elias Ward was no ordinary foe. Even as his ship bent under the pressure, he commanded. Every system with lethal precision. Auxiliary engines ignited in perfect sequence, redistributing mass and momentum. The Revenant twisted through the field like a dancer, reducing the gravitational effect just enough to prevent catastrophic damage. Mara's voice was tense. Captain, the field is overwhelming. We may not hold. Ward's eyes were sharp, unyielding. Do not falter. Adapt. We survive no matter the cost. The Revenant's erasure field pulsed, countering Imperial energy beams. Some beams were absorbed, others erased entirely. Even as it took damage, it maneuvered with skill that defied logic. The battle escalates. The dreadnought's massive cannons open fire, missiles streaking toward the Revenant. The human ship twisted, dodging missiles at impossible angles while simultaneously firing precision blasts at Imperial destroyers nearby. The Dominator and remaining cruisers targeted weak points exposed by the lance, hitting shields and systems that the Revenant couldn't defend all at once. The human ship rocked under the combined assault, but it was far from finished. Ward had trained for this. Every crew member moved in perfect harmony, repairing, adjusting, and countering in real time. Imperial losses despite the dreadnought's firepower, losses mounted. A cruiser exploded as a focused pulse from the Revenant's kinetic weapon tore through its hull. A destroyer drifted powerless after sustained fire. Even the Dominator's shields were compromised from repeated strikes. Callus's face tightened. We must focus. Target the propulsion systems directly. Keep it in the lance. The fleet obeyed, concentrating fire while the dreadnoughts' gravity field held the Revenant in place. For a moment, hope surged across the bridge. Victory seemed possible. The Revenant strikes back then. With an almost imperceptible movement, the Revenant released its secret weapon, a concentrated graviton pulse amplified by its own erasure field. The pulse struck the dreadnought momentarily, destabilizing the gravity field. Energy readings spiked, alarms blared, and the dreadnought shook violently, field weakening. An officer shouted, "The ship is overloading." Callus gritted his teeth. "Hold it together, focus fire, do not let it escape." Ward's voice over the comms was calm, almost taunting. "You cannot win by strength alone, Admiral. Humans survive because we adapt. Remember that." The turning point, despite their best efforts, the dreadnought's gravity lance began to falter. The immense energy required was taking its toll on the massive ship. Systems were overheating, shields flickering. Even with concentrated fire from the remaining fleet, the Revenant twisted free, using the pulse to break the gravitational grip. It reappeared at 3 million kilometers, engines flaring, shields intact. The human ship had survived the Empire's ultimate weapon. On the Dominator's bridge, the crew went silent. Even Callus's jaw tightened in disbelief. "This cannot be," Varine whispered. Kaelis clenched his fists. "It can," he said. his voice barely audible. "We have faced the truth. Humanity cannot be defeated by power alone." The first defeat, the Revenant, then struck with precision unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. It targeted the remaining ships systematically, bypassing shields, striking vital systems, and leaving wreckage in its wake. One by one, cruisers and destroyers were destroyed or disabled. The Imperial fleet had fought valiantly, but the human warship's combination of skill, technology, and strategy was unbeatable. For the first time in centuries, the Invincible Empire had suffered a complete tactical defeat at the hands of a single vessel. Even the Hyperion dreadnought, battered but still afloat, could not turn the tide. The message sent with the fleet in ruins and the dreadnought damaged beyond immediate repair. The Revenant sent one final transmission. The Empire has met its first defeat. Remember this day. Remember the humans who survived. We do not strike without reason, but when provoked, we prevail. Then, the human warship vanished again into the void, leaving the Imperial remnants drifting, broken and fearful. Callus stood at the viewport, staring at the empty darkness. He felt a mixture of awe, frustration, and fear. The Empire had been humiliated, its legend tarnished, its fleets shattered, and the galaxy would never forget. Aftermath silence settled over the remaining Imperial ships. Crews wept, repaired, and prayed. Survivors relayed what had happened, sending warnings across the sectors. The Invincible Empire would recover, of course it always did. But it would remember the name HSS Revenant forever. Callus knew one thing above all: the battle was over. But the war for respect, fear, and survival had only begun. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's power. The first defeat of the Empire was not just a military victory. It was a message, a declaration. Humans were not to be underestimated, and somewhere in the darkness the Revenant sailed on, ready for the next challenge.